PP's Rendezvous with Destiny. I'll be upfront right now. I haven't known how to write about anything in a long form for a very long while now. This season has been the hardest span of time in recent history. I know I'm not alone in that sentiment, but it's been exceedingly difficult for me to make heads or tails of anything substantial for a while now, beyond following the minutiae and day-to-day happenings on Gab. We're both on the Gab platform. The 40,000 view has been nearly impossible to discern through the fog of war. We are at war, ladies and gentlemen. Fourth wave war, information war. And with so much silence from those who we depend on, it's often like we are flying blind for some time now. Needless to say, it has been easy to get caught up in the mental maelstrom of this past year. The ever-present temptation to overdose on black pills, which have magically made themselves both abundant and free over the past few months, is ever present. And it's no exaggeration that this dark winter has worn itself very bitter and heavy around the neck of the nation, attempting to grind down what little resolve it seems to have left at this moment in time, until we all just capitulate and accept the next 100 years of, quote, progressive regimes trampling over our lives, our friends, our families, our communities and churches, before blending us up and extruding us out as some semi-human golem, bound to forever serve the well-spoken over our lives by our would-be masters. Slaves, all of us, living as little more than slaves, exploited for generations to come. 2020 has been a thief. All of us have been robbed in some capacity by this year, and as we prepare ourselves to bid this awful year farewell, the unspoken fear among many of us, the one no one wants to say for fear of actually damning us all to such a terrible fate, is that nothing will change for the better in 2021. Rather, that things will only continue to get worse, that we will need to accept this new life, whatever it is, in this reduced and anemic capacity. January 20th will arrive as the deliberately chosen narrative goes, and the entire Trump administration will be escorted out of the office in shame, to be remembered as little more than an aberrant detour in the march of history. Meanwhile, cackling leftists will gleam with pride as they invent new ways to actively punish anyone who dared stand in the way of their agenda, finally embarking upon the revenge fantasies they've let fester in the depths of their hearts since their crushing and humiliating defeat in 2016, seeking to impose suffering upon those they've deemed enemies of progress in the hopes of finally killing off any of the lingering vestiges of the valiant spirit that previously conquered them, determined to leave those who still possess in some measure in some such weakened and pathetic state that they may never rise up to mount a serious offence against them ever again. Yet one phrase ringing in my ears like a klaxon: if their victory was assured, their propaganda wouldn't be necessary. And he points you to this. I won't play the Graham Tone's explanation, but the quip he reminds us is, any man who must say, I am the king, is no true king. And yet we see the proclamations every day, often coming directly from the mouth of the bumbling, senile, impotent, treasonous, corrupt beyond compare, pedocrat, who dares peddle the fiction of the non-existent office of the president-elect, not only to our own citizenry, but to the entire world. Every day he is joined by the constant refrains from the treasonous media apparatus, all repeating the same poisonous sentiments that would plunge us all into generations of ruin and ad infinitum. Concede, concede, accept the lie and concede, for you cannot oppose us. Every day I see more of my brethren fall into despair. It's easy to fight when you're well fed, well armed, and have overwhelming numbers and resources. It's far harder to fight when you are being demonized on multiple fronts, when the money's run out and you feel you haven't the strength to go on. That's what 2020 has been about. Our enemies plotted to steal and rob and destroy everything in order to bring us and our children to our knees, to control our future, to demand we bow down before their throne, forgetting that the spirit of Thermopylae still animates some of us, those of us who will never back down, no matter the cost. It's been said that great men of history are those of exceptional character and ability, somehow made of stronger and better stuff than the rest of us, and who managed to bend the world around them by sheer power of will. This Nietzschean perspective couldn't be further from the truth. The man who changed history and are the yielded ones who give themselves over as vessels of the divine, that is, Denasium and Energia. Did a little bit of research. Potentiality and actuality. It's the Aristotle train of thought. the life-creating energy of God and answer, "Here am I, send me." These are the ones who will willingly to stand out, to look foolish, to make themselves objects of mockery and derision and hate in order to bring back territory from evil and vanquish it in order that at the end of their lives, when they are judged, they will hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." You see, humanity by itself is little more than weakness and brokenness, with history itself often being little more than a compilation of moments akin to Isildur, reference to the Lord of the Rings, failing to cast the one ring into the fires of Mount Doom, moments when all our abilities were misused, our virtues tossed out the window, moments the strength of men failed. And that would be the totality of the story of mankind: failure, weakness, selfish betrayal, but the advent of one promised child upon the earth, whose birth we all just celebrated a few short days ago, so that we have overcome these flaws and failings and be more like the one who created us in the first place. We all have the divine spark and the potentiality. It's true, God does give me certain capacities and abilities, but more than that, great men are forged in critical moments and by the size and strength of their opponents. It's why in the old Bible stories, you often hear talk of giants, unholy hybrids who relied on the strength and power supplied to them through their demonic bloodlines, and an often helpless and hapless people, sometimes whittled down to just one man out of all of them who had the courage to obey God and entrust him with his life, who would eventually vanquish them all. I want you to understand, you come from a line of giant slayers, Mr. Vice President, and it's not by virtue of any superior quality which you may or may not possess inside yourself. It's by virtue of the call on your life and the one backing you. For the past 4 years, President Trump has been the most powerful man on earth. From one day, on January 6th, you, Vice President Pence, will be the most powerful man on earth. And on that day, you and you alone will have the power to set not just America, but all of humanity free, or you will have the power to sentence us all to slavery. Which side are you on, Mr. Vice President? The side of truth, the side of the people, or are you the side of lies and for those for which they emanate? I do not envy your position, sir. That's how I ever wanted this moment in history to ever play out, and I would just give about everything to have it go the other way. But it seems that you have a rendezvous with destiny, Mr. Vice President. My apologies, Bruce. Let me bring you straight in there.
Hello.
Let me drop away there. Great to have you. I wanted to get that one into the zeitgeist there, because there is a pivotal moment on January the 6th. And the overwhelming evidence that's coming out, just to touch in with events over the United States, this is where it seems to hang in the balance, because the Supreme Court, nobody's touching any of the evidence. So it seems that somehow in the Democrats' new bill, that they tried to cancel out the president's power of invocation of the Insurrection Act. We are come up to a very tumultuous time. The next 3 or 4 weeks, however that plays out, will affect the rest of our lives. And I want to invite all my American friends to check in with Bruce and just to bring us up to date on Scotland. Scotland's been in the papers. Herself has been outrageously caught at a wake with her mask off, breaking her own rules. And she even accepted a resignation from one of her own parties who did the very same, but she's not to be held to the same account. Take it away, Bruce.
Yeah, well, the article touched on you just read out the spirit of what's going on, and the shameless displays of submission to this technology and killing of the spirit. Is of course very close to the heart of Nietzsche, and Aristotle did discuss a lot of these things in a lot of different ways. But regarding the Sturgeon thing and the response from it, I was flabbergasted at the response of it. She, because every single day, 5 days a week, she usually gives a briefing of some kind, and and it's always rules, and you have to do this. And yet, when she gets caught, and there she was, 24 hours later in Parliament speaking about it, and I'm kicking myself, error of judgment, etc. And it was blatantly.
I've done something real.
Yeah.
I've done a boo-boo. Please forgive me. How can I throw myself on the ground and subjugate myself before you? I'm still hanging on to power. Just let me do this little role play.
What was a few days beforehand, actually, and this kind of gives a feel of the mainstream media in Scotland. A few days before, a journalist called Chris Musson, who writes for the Daily Record, asked Sturgeon a question: what would you get Boris Johnson for a Christmas present? And she said, oh, I don't know, maybe a hairbrush. Now, reverse the situation between a male politician saying that about a female. It would have been blatant misogyny. It would have been, they would have been crucified. You know, if Boris Johnson said that about a female politician, it'd be no misogynist. And of course, but the journalist didn't even go near Sturgeon in this. And then again on the mask thing, when she didn't wear a mask, none of the journalists, you know, challenged her. It was basically, they were all almost protecting her in the way their commentaries about it. And in the Parliament, what was amazing, not one opposition politician in the Scottish Parliament brought it up and challenged Sturgeon about it. It was incredible, an incredible piece of theatre. The submission to this, and of course, Sturgeon has got a form for castigating people who break the rules. I mean, her own chief medical officer broke the rules, Cathy Calderwood, and she resigned, and Sturgeon said, "Oh, that's the correct thing to do. She can't be the chief medical officer and break rules." Well, she obviously thinks she can be first minister and break rules. And the only reason she apologised in Parliament anyway is because she was caught. If she hadn't been caught,
yeah,
she wouldn't have apologised. The pub where the wake was, the owner has come out and said, "Oh, she only took the mask off for a second. She was really great with the staff in the pub, and essentially, the photographer who took the picture is scum." Incredible form of submission. When it's and he said, the owner said, you know, the hospitality industry is going through a really hard time at the moment, and you know, this has affected us because there was a call for people to boycott the pub. And but of course, it's Sturgeon herself, her rules, which she's implemented, which is giving the hospitality business a hard time. So there's a pub owner who is under flack for defending Sturgeon, is not even going for the person who's making businesses go bust. That level of submission is quite incredible, I think. I'll give you another example of this kind of how low kind of people in their humanity in submission have slipped in this kind of madness. A contact of mine, so to speak, he got in touch with me. He was a detective for the Thames Valley Police, retired now, and he told me a story about his sister, who's an elderly woman, lives at home with her sick husband who's got cancer, and he's receiving treatment at the moment. And on Christmas Eve, he received a knock at the door by two police officers, and they were very angry with this woman because apparently a neighbour had snitched on her for having a tradesperson come to fix something in their house. The thing they got fixed was actually an outside light, which they needed because they come home back from the hospital after getting treatment. Her husband gets treatment, and they need to see because they're both a bit unsteady on their feet. So she explained the situation to the policeman, but no, he wasn't having any of it. He was going to fine her, but he said, "I'll just give you a warning this time." Now, on perusal of the regulations, having a tradesperson in Tier 4 in the Thames Valley is not against regulations. So my video, I said, basically, what the hell is going on? Is this the 2020 where ordinary people are terrorised for having tradespeople in their house? Neighbours are snitching on people, and yet Nicola Sturgeon can almost get celebrated in the press for not wearing a mask and defended. I mean, it's very, very low, and I think it's my suspicion it's deliberate. in effect, to antagonise us. Because what is the next chapter in this sorry tale of COVID 1984? You know, they're kind of, it's almost like they're trolling us, trolling the masses. I mean, there was Tobias Elwood, who wants to get the army into schools to test children for COVID-19, stick a swab up their nose. And he was caught breaking regulations at dinner. And again, it was just an error of judgment. You'll reflect, you'll think much more carefully next time, and then carries on as normal. And yet, my example here of my detective friend's sister, they get traumatized at the front door on Christmas Eve late at night for bringing a tradesperson to fix a light, and it wasn't even breaking the rules anyways. And I said in my video, I said, I think, you know, the UK government, Priti Patel and the Sturgeons and the Scottish government, they need to hang their head in shame if this is what we've come to. Because one has to ask the question, why did Cathy Calderwood, the chief medical officer, break the rules? Why did Dominic Cummings break the rules? Why did Neil Ferguson break the rules? Why did Piers Morgan break the rules in a taxi not wearing a mask? Why did Dr. Hillary break the rules? Why has Nicola Sturgeon broke the rules? Because ultimately, they don't believe. If it's such a deadly virus, they keep going on about how so deadly and we can't drop our guard. But yeah, they're very easily dropping their guard. You would think if they were amongst these scientific advisors, day in, day out, discussing it, they'd be extremely frightened, because the way they talk about it is that they're completely convinced. Whereas a lot of people and ordinary people are not convinced. But yet, when they see the politicians doing it and they see the Sturgeons doing it, it's you know, it's just brushed off like water off a duck's back. It's incredible. But again, I think it's deliberate. You know, it's deliberately trolling people. It's angering people, and I think, are they expecting people to revolt? Are they expecting people to take to the streets? And what happens then? Well, then they bring the army in, I think, and that'd be very dangerous. I think one should be very careful about losing one's temper, because I think they're trolling us deliberately to make us lose our temper. I think we can revolt peacefully. I think we can revolt being calm and refusing to go along with it, and still keep calling them out in a calm way. I don't think there's any other kind of way of thinking about it, to be frank. I mean, how else can they break the rules so blatantly and not expect people to be angry and then carry on as though nothing has happened? You know, the cancelling Christmas thing, I think that was very deliberate, because, like, as I've talked about on your show several times, that history is a very good example, because in totalitarian communist countries in the Eastern Bloc, for example, the blatant assault on Christianity was clear as day, and so now, and the hate crime laws coming in, which again they've got parallels in Eastern totalitarian bloc countries, and so the way they cancelled Christmas just a few days beforehand, a deliberate psychological ploy to make people extremely fearful. And it's been fearfulness for what, since March now, trolling people to be fearful. And this has precedent in where is it? I'll give you I've been reading this book. It's called The White Knights. It's pages from a Russian doctor's notebook. The doctor was Boris Solikov, and He was a doctor in Russia during the tumultuous years of the Russian Revolution and a survivor of the infamous Batyrki prison. And he had a remarkable story to tell. During his fascinating life, he encountered nearly every major political and cultural figure in Russia between 1917 and 1920, and was an eyewitness or participant in most of the major events of the period: the October Revolution, the Constituent Assembly, and an assassination attempt on Lenin's life, and the final collapse of the Northern Front. And the White Knight, this book, The White Knights, is his story. And I'll read a little bit from it. And it relates to this idea of Operation Fear. 2008. Okay. Here we go. In this light, the history of mankind became a struggle filled with dramatic moments between two civilizations. One, as old as the world itself, produced in the depths of the wild forests, born of the rapacious instincts of primitive men, our prehistoric ancestors full of violence, wrath, hatred, bloodthirsty hostility, instigated and supported by an insignificant minority, is the civilization of conflicts and wars, and is the greatest source of human misery. The other civilization is new, grown from the study of the laws by which man lives and feels, and prompted by faith in man and the desire to see him happy. This civilization, the product of real humanity, insists upon man's right to freedom, to equality, to remaining himself. It denies the right of the minority to impose its will upon the minority, for it is the civilization of goodness, of love. It is born of the love of life and humanity, of democratic principles, and of Christianity. As I have reviewed the tragic events which I had recently witnessed, I realize acutely that democracy was much more than a political system, that it was an ideology inbred in human nature, nursed by man in the depths of his heart, almost a religion, for it reflects the basic drivings of man, his unconscious belief in a free, happy, and unoppressed future for humanity. I realized that this belief was not blind or unfounded, for it was based on our intuitive knowledge of human nature, of the creative evolutionary development of the race to the final end. And in the book, he meets, there's a famous part in the book where he meets or describes the meeting between Lenin and Pavlov, the great psychologist. It is in relation to what's going on with Operation Fear and the psychologist, implied psychology of Spy B. This Operation Fear is been done before in the Soviet Union. I'll read this out. He says here, our school is in complete disagreement with the concept of Western physiologists like Muller, Virchow, or Needham, and he went on to outline the difference between the two schools. To the adherents of neurism, the personality of man, his pattern of acting and reacting is merely the product of individual experience during life. It is the end result of man's adaptation to environment. The experience is based on the formation of conditioned reflexes and the association of these reflexes in the brain. According to neurism, then, natural instinct, heredity in general, plays only a secondary role in man's behavior and his personality pattern. Does this mean that hereditary factors can be overcome by proper education? Asked Lenin. Under certain conditions, yes, was the reply from Pavlov. Yes, they can be overcome, I believe, and we have a good deal of experimental evidence that conditioned reflexes can abolish unconditioned reflexes, or as they are called, natural instinct. And as Pavlov explained, how he and his associates had found that external stimulus, fear, mask, social distancing, which forms the conditioned reflex, is of prime importance. The same conditioned reflex can be induced and formed in humans of very different personalities. This is in direct contradiction with European teaching. He admitted, according to them, that the organism's reactions depend on the specific properties of the organism itself, its chemistry, its physics, its individuality. And so, essentially, and they discuss also how keeping people in fear and making them fearful all the time can induce in animals cancer or other physical ailments. Now, you've got to look at what's happening with Spy B in the UK. They're one of the main thing about the psychologists was that people were not fearful enough, and so they induce people to be more fearful. And what does this do to people? Months and months and months of it wears them down. Wears them down. It's making people ill. So essentially, they are doing exactly what the totalitarian communists did in Russia. So there you go. I don't know if anyone can hear me. Ah, good. You hear me. So the psychology of conditioning, of what's happening, the intimidation by the police, turning up at people's doors, the aggression of people in shops, on public transport, of mask wearing. You know, to go on a train, if you haven't got a reason to wear a mask, or if you're refusing to wear a mask, being confronted daily with this, you know, the assault, you know, because no matter how strong a person is, no matter how, you know, decent in this sort of COVID-19 one is, even if you have a confrontation, your heartbeat goes up. The fight or flight response is enacted. And the government know this, the psychologists know this. They know that people will be worn down with this. And I think it's quite, it's inhumane. It's unethical. It's completely unethical. And this is exactly where we are. And of course, there's other things that they're doing there, which was in East Germany and in the Soviet Union. The snitching thing in East Germany. Apparently, this is another book I've read, which adds to the fearfulness that we're experiencing. This book, Stasiland: Stories from Behind the Berlin Wall. Essentially, it discusses in that the amount of informants that were going around in East Germany. There was thousands of them. So if you didn't follow the rules or said something out of turn, it was very easy to be reported. And in living under that kind of regime, it wore people down. It wore people down. But as it discusses in Stasiland, many people capitulated and submitted to the system for various different reasons. Well, because one, they thought they would get a seat at the table of privilege, so to speak, like all these journalists that are not calling out Sturgeon. Do they think they will escape any nastiness for what's going on? But of course, also in East Germany, for example, if you strayed out of line, they would sometimes come for you and threaten you with consequences. And for example, they would conjure up fake charges. They would say, "Well, we'll release something that you've done some crime, or you've been looking at pornography or something, or indecent images or something like that." And people quite readily capitulated to that and towed the party line. And you know, so there's this blatantness of the breaking the rules, of deliberately making us fearful. One has to wonder, because people are still denying. A lot of people deny that anything untoward is happening. They still think that someone like myself or other people are just conspiracy theorists by questioning it. But it's so blatant. They're breaking the rules. They're making us fearful. And something else, regarding regarding the hate speech rules that are coming out. Again, these will be used as a punishment to toe the party line. The identity politics that they will be pushing, speaking the Bible, questioning LGBT education in schools, punishable. These are all part of the same tentacles of this control system. And something very interesting happened in Scotland today, actually. It's quite shocking, I don't know when it happened, but I noticed it in Twitter today, was that there was one of the organisers of Pride Edinburgh in Scotland, John Hine, he died, and there was glowing obituaries by Pride Edinburgh, by Scots Gay Magazine, by the Edinburgh Evening News, etc. Of course, many people know it's very widely known that John Hine was a member of the Paedophile Information Exchange, and people are commenting on social media quite openly, saying, "Oh, this is terrible. He was a great man," etc. And so the blatantness of how debased people have become is quite shocking. This as discussed in the White Knight's book, this kind of primitive this primitive kind of humanity.
So I'm not going to belay the point. I'm going to let you go, Bruce. And we'll talk again real soon. Yeah, I'll just have to see the wave in that hand. That's all I can see. Thanks very much. Talk to you soon, my friend. Take care. Bye-bye. Please, if you're new to the show, don't forget to smash the like button. Also the subscription button and the bell. You'll be reminded of future broadcasts here on the Grand Torino. Please, if you could, I beseech, I importune you, please leave your thoughts, comments, and witticisms in the comment section down below. And please, if you could, while we are demonetized, we are not demoralized. Please thank you for your thank you for your continued support on the Grand Torino website, World Wide Web, grandtorino.ie. Snail mail options available there as well. PO Box 131-179. Without you, there is no me, and I'm still here, so it's pissing a lot of liberals off.